The meeting hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a kilometer in every direction. Massive pillars held up the crystal dome ceiling, through which 3 suns could be seen burning in the sky. Ambassador Marcus Chen stood at the human podium, his uniform crisp and formal. Around him sat representatives from 63 different species, each watching from their specialized seating areas. Marcus cleared his throat and began his report. His voice echoed through the chamber as translation devices converted his words into hundreds of alien languages simultaneously. Honored council members, I come with news of victory. 3 months ago, the Vrexian raiders attacked our mining colony on Theta 7. We lost 400 civilians in the initial assault, but humanity did not run. We did not beg for protection. We fought back. He pressed a button on his console. Holographic images appeared above the center of the chamber. They showed human warships engaging the massive Vrexian cruisers. Explosions bloomed in the darkness of space. One by one, the Vrexian ships fell. We destroyed 17 Vrexian warships and captured 3 more. We rescued not only our own people, but also freed 2,000 Keltharian prisoners the Vrexians had taken months ago. This was done with human ships, human courage, and human blood. Marcus waited for the applause. None came. The council members sat in silence. Some whispered to their aides. Others looked away from the display. The council speaker, a tall being called Archon Veltoth, rose from his elevated seat. His skin shimmered like oil on water, and his 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Ambassador Chen, your report has been noted. However, the council must inform you that our own peacekeeping forces were responsible for the ultimate defeat of the Vrexian threat in that sector. Your forces merely provided support. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Support? Archon, with all respect, your forces did not arrive until 2 days after the battle ended. We have complete sensor records showing the council does not question human bravery. Veltoth interrupted smoothly. But military strategy often appears different to those participating in small parts of a larger operation. The peacekeeping fleet had already weakened Vrexian resolve through diplomatic pressure and economic sanctions. Your battle was simply the final note in a symphony we conducted. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Marcus looked around in disbelief. The other ambassadors were nodding. Some were already marking their tablets, recording the official version of events. But that's not what happened, Marcus protested. We have video evidence, combat logs, everything. As I said, your contribution is noted in our records. Now shall we move to the next agenda item? Marcus stood frozen at his podium as the council moved on. His hands gripped the edge of the console until his knuckles turned white. Behind him, his aide leaned forward. Sir, we should return to our seats, the young man whispered urgently. Marcus nodded slowly and stepped back. As he walked to the human section of the gallery, his mind raced. This was not the first time the council had dismissed human achievements. It was becoming a pattern. Several hours later, Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo sat in the communications center of the human embassy on Axis Prime. Banks of computers surrounded her, their screens filled with data streams from across the galaxy. Sarah's job was to monitor public broadcasts and news feeds, keeping humanity informed about galactic events. Tonight, something unusual caught her attention. A data packet had been routed through the human embassy's network by mistake. It should have gone directly to the council's secure servers, but a routing error had bounced it through human systems first. Sarah almost deleted it. Embassy protocols were clear about not accessing council communications. But something made her pause. The packet's origin code was marked with a Vrexian signature. Why would the council be receiving direct communications from the Vrexians? The two were supposed to be enemies. Sarah glanced around the communication center. She was alone on the night shift. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. If she was caught accessing this data, it could mean her career. It could mean jail time. She opened the file. The encryption was strong, but Sarah had been breaking code since she was 12 years old. 20 minutes later, the message appeared on her screen in clear text. Her blood went cold as she read. The message was from a Vrexian warlord to a council member. It contained coordinates, dates, ship movements, and payments. Massive payments being transferred from council accounts to Vrexian raiders. But it was the final section that made Sarah's hands shake. The human colony ship will arrive at the Talon sector on schedule. Our forces will be waiting. As agreed, your peacekeeping fleet will remain at least 6 hours away. The Council will express regret at humanity's loss and offer condolences. Payment will be transferred upon confirmation of casualties. Sarah read it 3 times. Then she read it again. Each time the words stayed the same. The meaning stayed the same. The Council was paying the Vrexians to attack human colonies. She accessed the historical data attached to the message. There were dozens of similar communications going back years. Every unfortunate encounter between humans and Vrexians had been planned, coordinated, purchased. The Council had been feeding humanity into a meat grinder, using them to weaken the Vrexians through attrition while ensuring neither species became too powerful. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. She copied everything. She encrypted it with human military codes. She sent copies to 3 different secure locations. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. She stood on shaking legs and walked quickly through the empty corridors of the embassy. Ambassador Chen needed to see this. Captain Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Fleet needed to see this. Everyone needed to see this. She found Marcus in his office, reviewing the day's council session with his senior staff. When she burst through the door without knocking, they all looked up in surprise. "Lieutenant, this is a closed meeting," one of the diplomats said sharply. "Sir, I need to speak with the ambassador immediately. It's urgent. It's..." Sarah struggled to find words big enough for what she had discovered. "It's everything, sir." Marcus saw something in her expression that made him dismiss the others. When the door closed and they were alone, Sarah handed him her tablet. "Sir, I intercepted this by accident. It's a communication between the Council and the Vrexians. Multiple communications. They've been working together. Against us." Marcus took the tablet. Sarah watched his face as he read. She saw confusion give way to shock, then shock give way to a cold, terrible anger. "How many colonies?" he asked quietly. "At least 15 that I've confirmed so far, sir. Maybe more." "How many dead?" Sarah had done the math while walking to his office. 37,000 confirmed. Another 12,000 missing, presumed dead. Marcus set down the tablet very carefully as if it might explode. He walked to the window of his office. Outside, the lights of Axis Prime sparkled in the darkness. Somewhere out there, the council members slept peacefully in their quarters. Somewhere out there, more human colonists were probably dying right now, following council-provided navigation routes that led straight into Vrexian ambushes. "Sir, what do we do?" Marcus turned back to face her. His eyes were hard as diamonds. "We verify everything. We gather every piece of evidence we can find. And then, Lieutenant, we show the galaxy exactly what the Council has done. We show them what happens when you lie to humanity." Sarah nodded slowly. She could see it in his face now. The fury, the cold, calculated rage of someone who had discovered a betrayal so deep it could never be forgiven. The Council had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed humanity would never find out. They had assumed humans would accept their place as expendable pawns. They had assumed wrong. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over Axis Prime. The first sun rose above the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. It looked like fire spreading across the heavens. The war room of the human embassy was never meant to hold this many people. Captain James Rodriguez stood at the head of the table, his uniform bearing the insignia of the Earth Defense Fleet. Around him sat Ambassador Chen, Lieutenant Okonkwo, and a dozen other senior human officials. Every face in the room looked grim. "Show them what you found," Marcus said to Sarah. Sarah stood and activated the holographic projector. Images filled the air above the table. Communications, financial records, navigation charts. Each one told the same horrible story. "This goes back at least 8 years, Sarah explained. Every time the Council recommended a colonization route to us, they were sending us into Vrexian territory. Not by accident, by design." One of the military officers leaned forward. "How can you be certain?" "Because the pattern is too perfect," Sarah replied. She pulled up a star chart. Red dots marked human colonies that had been attacked. Blue lines showed the routes the Council had recommended. Every single blue line led directly to a red dot. The Council's cartography division knows these territories better than anyone. They have sensor nets throughout the galaxy. They knew exactly where the Vrexian raiders operated, and they sent us there anyway. Captain Rodriguez studied the chart with cold fury. "How many ships?" 43 colony vessels, 17 military escorts, all destroyed or heavily damaged in what the Council called unfortunate encounters with hostile forces. "That's not all," Marcus added. He stood and pulled up another set of documents. We started digging deeper. The Council has been blocking our technology patents for years. Innovations that could have revolutionized galactic medicine, energy production, and agriculture. All rejected on technical grounds. He showed them example after example. Human engineers had developed a fusion reactor 3 times more efficient than anything currently in use. The Council's patent office had rejected it, claiming it violated safety standards. But the standards they cited did not actually exist in Council law. Human biologists had created a crop that could grow in almost any environment, capable of ending food shortages across the galaxy. The Council's Agricultural Committee had blocked it, saying it needed 200 years of environmental testing. They've been keeping us weak, Marcus continued. Economically, technologically, militarily. Every time we try to advance, they find a reason to stop us. An older diplomat spoke up. But why? What do they gain? Control, Captain Rodriguez answered. Think about it. Humanity is young, aggressive, and innovative. We don't fit neatly into their established order. We ask too many questions. We challenge too many assumptions. They can't destroy us outright without looking like monsters. So they do it slowly. They use us up piece by piece. There's something else, Sarah said quietly. She pulled up financial records. The Council has been charging us protective tariffs on all our exports. They said it was to fund the peacekeeping fleet that guards the trade routes. I remember. Marcus nodded. 15% on all goods. Those funds never went to the peacekeeping fleet. They were redistributed to Council member worlds as economic subsidies. We've been paying for our own suppression. The room fell silent. The weight of the betrayal pressed down on everyone present. These were not acts of war. These were the calculated moves of those who saw humanity as a resource to be exploited and controlled. We need more proof, one of the diplomats said. The Council will deny everything. They'll say we're lying, that we're trying to destabilize the galactic order. I know someone who might help, Marcus said. An old friend. He tried to warn me years ago, but I didn't listen. 2 hours later, Marcus sat in a quiet tea house in the alien quarter of Axis Prime. The establishment catered to Keltharian tastes. The air smelled of sulfur and cinnamon. The lighting was dim, suited to Keltharian eyes. Ixthor arrived exactly on time. The Keltharian moved slowly, his once proud bearing now bent with age and bitterness. His scales had dulled from their natural bright green to a muddy brown. It was a sign of deep stress among his people. Marcus, Ixthor said, settling into the chair across from him. I wondered when you would finally come. You tried to tell me, Marcus admitted. 5 years ago at the Trade Summit, you said the Council was not what it seemed, and you thought I was a conspiracy theorist. There was no anger in Ixthor's voice, only sadness. I don't blame you. I wouldn't have believed it either once. What happened to you? Ixthor ordered tea from the serving drone. He waited until it arrived and they were alone again before speaking. I was a Council inspector. My job was to investigate complaints from member species. 12 years ago, a Sarathi colony filed a report. They claimed Council peacekeepers had stood by while raiders destroyed their settlements. I investigated. I found evidence. Not just for that attack, but for dozens of others. He sipped his tea slowly. The Council did not appreciate my findings. I was removed from my position. My credentials were revoked. They said I had fabricated evidence. My own government disowned me rather than face Council sanctions. Why didn't you go public? I tried. No one would listen. The major news networks are all funded by Council grants. The independent journalists who tried to help me had their licenses revoked. One disappeared. Another died in a shuttle accident that was suspiciously well-timed. Ixthor's eyes met Marcus's. You learn quickly to stay quiet when speaking up. Costs everything. Marcus pulled out a secure tablet and slid it across the table. We found evidence. Communications between the Council and the Vrexians. Financial records, everything. Ixthor's hands trembled as he read. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then tears began rolling down his scaled cheeks. Finally, he whispered. Finally, someone else sees it. We need your help. We need everything you have. Every investigation you did, every piece of evidence you gathered. I kept it all, Ixthor said. I knew someday it would matter. I have files hidden in data caches across the galaxy. Records the Council thinks were destroyed. Testimony from victims they paid to stay silent. Financial trails they thought were buried too deep to find. He looked at Marcus with something like hope dawning in his eyes. What are you going to do? We're going to demand an emergency council session. We're going to present all of this evidence publicly, broadcast it across every communication channel in the galaxy, and we're going to demand answers. They'll never allow it. They'll shut you down before you can speak. Then we'll make them shut us down in front of everyone. Let the galaxy see what happens when someone tries to speak truth to the council. Ixthor nodded slowly. There are others. Species who have been wronged. The Brennix Collective, the Sarathi. Even some of the smaller member worlds are tired of council domination. If humanity stands up, they might stand with you. We're going to find out, Marcus said. Back at the embassy, Sarah was coordinating with human intelligence officers across the galaxy. The evidence was being compiled into a presentation that could not be ignored or dismissed. Videos of colonists dying while council ships watched, financial records showing decades of theft, communications proving active collaboration with hostile forces. Captain Rodriguez was mobilizing the Earth Defense Fleet. If the Council tried to silence humanity by force, they would find that humans did not go quietly. In his office, Marcus composed a message to Earth. The government needed to know everything. Humanity needed to be ready for what came next. He typed the final line of his report. The Council has declared us expendable. It is time we show them that humanity does not accept such declarations. We do not surrender. We do not submit. We fight back. He sent the message with encryption codes that would ensure it reached the highest levels of Earth's government. Then he drafted his request for an emergency council session. The words were formal and diplomatic, but beneath the polite language was a simple message. We know what you did, and the whole galaxy is about to know too. Marcus looked out his office window at the council station in the distance. Its lights glowed against the darkness of space, a symbol of order and civilization. But Marcus knew the truth now. That station was built on lies. Its order was maintained through manipulation and murder. Its civilization was a facade hiding calculated cruelty. Soon, everyone would know. The fury that had been building in Marcus's chest since Sarah showed him the evidence had crystallized into cold determination. The Council had made humanity into their victims. They had counted on human weakness, human ignorance, human compliance. They were about to learn they had counted wrong. Outside, the stars burned in the darkness. Among them, human colony ships continued their journeys following Council-approved routes. Some of those ships would never reach their destinations. More humans would die while the Council watched and counted their profits, but not for much longer. The time for silence was over. The time for diplomacy was ending. The time for truth had come, and with it, humanity's fury. The emergency council session request sat unanswered for 3 days. Marcus sent follow-up messages. He invoked ancient protocols that guaranteed every member species the right to address the council. He cited precedents going back centuries. The council ignored them all. On the 4th day, Marcus received a response. It was not from the council speaker. It was from the Office of Member Relations, a low-level administrative division. Ambassador Chen, your request for an emergency session has been reviewed and denied. The Council finds no emergency exists that requires immediate attention. Your concerns will be added to the agenda for the next regular session, scheduled for 6 months from now. The Council appreciates your patience and understanding. Marcus read the message 3 times. 6 months. They were telling him to wait 6 months while more humans died. He was drafting an angry response when Sarah burst into his office. Sir, turn on the news feeds, now. Marcus activated the holographic display. Every major news network was showing the same footage. A massive debris field floating in space, twisted metal, scattered cargo containers, and bodies. Hundreds of bodies drifting among the wreckage. The news anchor's voice was somber. The colony ship New Hope, carrying 50,000 settlers to the Arcturus system, has been destroyed. Initial reports suggest Vrexian raiders attacked the vessel in the nebular passage. There are no known survivors. This represents the largest loss of human life in a single incident since the founding of the colony program. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. The New Hope, he knew that ship. He had attended its launch ceremony 2 months ago. He had shaken hands with the captain, a woman named Sarah Martinez who had 3 children. He had watched families bored with hope in their eyes, ready to start new lives on a fresh world. 50,000 people. Gone. Sir, Sarah said quietly. The nebular passage route. That was Council recommended, Marcus finished. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. They told us it was the safest path to Arcturus. They said their peacekeeping fleet patrolled that sector regularly. Sarah pulled up data on her tablet. There's more. We intercepted emergency transmissions from the New Hope before it was destroyed. Some escape pods got away. They recorded everything. She transferred the video to his display. Marcus watched in horror. The footage was shaky, filmed from an escape pod by someone's personal communicator. Through the small window, the New Hope was visible, burning in the darkness. Vrexian warships circled it like sharks, pouring fire into the helpless colony vessel. But that was not what made Marcus's blood turn to ice. In the background of the footage, clearly visible, were 3 Council peacekeeping cruisers. They sat motionless, their weapons silent, watching as 50,000 humans died. The person filming was crying. They're just watching. Oh God, they're just watching. Why won't they help us? Why won't they help? Then the transmission cut off as the Vrexian ships turned their attention to the escape pods. Marcus stood slowly. His hands were shaking. Not with fear, with rage so pure and overwhelming it took his breath away. Send this footage to every network in the galaxy, he said. His voice was very quiet, very calm. Every news service, every independent journalist, every social media platform. I want every being in the galaxy to see what the Council allowed to happen. Sir, if we release this without Council permission, I don't care about their permission. Do it now. Sarah nodded and left quickly. Marcus stood alone in his office, watching the footage loop again and again. The burning ship, the watching Council vessels, the desperate voice of someone who thought help was coming and died learning the truth. 50,000 people who trusted the Council's guidance. 50,000 people who believed the lies. Marcus accessed his communication console and sent a message directly to Captain Rodriguez. James, move the fleet. I want every ship we have in position around this station within 12 hours. This ends now. The response came immediately. Understood. We're on our way. Then Marcus began recording a message. Not a diplomatic request. Not a polite inquiry. A statement. This is Ambassador Marcus Chen of Humanity, broadcasting on all frequencies. The Galactic Council has lied to my people. They have knowingly sent human colonists to their deaths. They have collaborated with our enemies. They have stolen our resources and suppressed our development. And when we tried to bring these crimes to their attention, they told us to wait. He pulled up the evidence, all of it. Communications between the Council and Vrexians, financial records showing payments for attacks, the footage of the New Hope dying while Council ships watched. I am sharing with you all the proof of their betrayal. Every species in this galaxy should see what the Council really is. They are not protectors. They are not peacekeepers. They are manipulators and murderers who maintain their power through lies and calculated cruelty. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately. We will no longer recognize their authority over human space. We will no longer follow their guidance. We will no longer accept their lies. To any species that has suffered similar treatment, know that you are not alone. Know that someone is finally willing to stand up and say enough. He ended the recording and broadcast it on every channel simultaneously. Within minutes, it was spreading across the galaxy faster than light, carried by the quantum communication network the Council itself had built. The response was immediate and chaotic. Security forces surrounded the human embassy within an hour. Council peacekeepers took up positions at every entrance. No one was allowed in or out. Archon Veltoth appeared on the official Council channel, his 4 eyes blazing with anger. The human ambassador has committed serious crimes against galactic order. He has disseminated classified information. He has slandered the Council. He has violated every treaty and agreement binding his species to civilized society. Humanity will face severe sanctions unless Ambassador Chen retracts his statements and surrenders himself for justice. But Veltoth's message was already being drowned out by others. The footage of the New Hope was everywhere. The evidence was spreading faster than the Council could suppress it. News services that had never dared question the Council were suddenly asking hard questions, and other voices were starting to speak up. A Sorathi representative broadcast a message claiming similar treatment. Keltharian activists shared Ixthor's suppressed reports. A Brenix Collective spokesperson announced they were launching their own investigation into Council activities. The carefully maintained image of Council infallibility was Cracking. Marcus stood at the window of his embassy, watching the peacekeepers take positions. They had placed military barriers around the building. Weapon emplacements pointed at the human structures. His aide approached nervously. "Sir, they're going to storm the embassy. We don't have the weapons to fight them off." "We won't need to," Marcus replied. He pointed up at the sky. Through the atmosphere, shapes were appearing. Human warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. The Earth Defense Fleet had arrived. Captain Rodriguez's face appeared on Marcus's communication screen. "Marcus, we're in position. No one's touching that embassy." The Council peacekeepers on the ground had noticed too. Their formations wavered as they looked up at the gathering human fleet. Marcus opened a channel to the Council station. "Archon Veltoth, I believe we need to talk. In person, in front of the entire Council. Unless you'd prefer to explain to the galaxy why you're starting a war to prevent me from speaking." There was a long silence. Marcus could imagine the panic on the Council station. They had not expected this. They had thought humanity would back down, would negotiate, would submit like they always had before. They had forgotten that sometimes, when pushed too far, even the most patient being will push back. Finally, Veltoth responded, "You have 1 hour to present your case to the Council. Then you will leave Axis Prime and never return." "I'll take the hour," Marcus replied. "That's all I need." He looked at Sarah and his senior staff. "Get everything ready. Every piece of evidence, every testimony, every video. We're going to lay it all out where they can't ignore it, can't hide it, can't spin it." "And if they still deny it?" Sarah asked. Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Then the galaxy will see them deny it. They'll see the Council refuse to acknowledge truth even when presented with undeniable proof. Either way, we win." An hour later, Marcus walked through the Council chamber doors. Every seat was filled. Every species representative was present. They had to be. The entire galaxy was watching this broadcast. Marcus walked to the human podium with his head high. Behind him, Sarah and Ixthor carried data drives containing all their evidence. Archon Veltoth glared down at him from the speaker's chair. "You have your hour, human. Use it wisely." Marcus looked up at the dome ceiling, knowing that billions of beings across the galaxy were watching through cameras and streams. He looked at the assembled representatives, at the species who had accepted Council rule for centuries. Then he began to speak. "You wanted us weak," he said quietly. "You wanted us manageable. You wanted us grateful for the scraps you allowed us to keep. You used us as weapons against your enemies. You sent us to die so your hands stayed clean. You stole from us, lied to us, and murdered us by the thousands." The holographic evidence played above the Council chamber for all to see. Communications between Council members and Vrexian warlords, financial transactions showing payments for human deaths, navigation charts proving deliberate manipulation, and worst of all, the footage of the New Hope burning while Council ships watched. Marcus let the evidence speak for itself. He did not need to add commentary. The images were damning enough. When the presentation ended, silence filled the massive chamber. No one spoke. No one moved. Even Archon Veltoth seemed frozen in his elevated seat. Then a Sarathi representative stood. Her name was Cress, and she was known as one of the Council's most loyal supporters, until now. "I have a question for the Council," Cress said, her translator making her chittering voice understandable to all. 12 years ago, my colony world of Sarathi Prime sent a petition to this Council. We complained that raiders were attacking our settlements while peacekeepers stood by. We were told we were mistaken, that we had misunderstood what we saw. Now I see human evidence showing the same pattern. Were we mistaken, Archon? Or were we lied to as well?" Before Veltoth could respond, a Keltharian delegate rose. "My cousin Ixthor was destroyed for trying to expose Council corruption. His career was ruined. His reputation was destroyed. This Council called him a liar, but he was telling the truth, wasn't he?" Another delegate stood, then another. Within minutes, a dozen species representatives were on their feet, all demanding answers. Veltoth's skin rippled with agitation. "Order! I demand order! These accusations are based on incomplete information and human manipulation. The Council has always acted in the best interests of all species." "Then explain the financial records," Marcus interrupted. "Explain why payments were made to Vrexian raiders after each attack on human colonies. Explain why your ships watched 50,000 humans die and did nothing. Security situations are complex. You cannot understand, then help us understand. Marcus shot back. Here now, in front of the galaxy. Explain how allowing the murder of civilians serves galactic security. Veltoth's 4 eyes darted around the chamber. He was looking for support from other council leaders, but many were avoiding his gaze. They knew that billions of beings across the galaxy were watching this confrontation. Whatever happened here would define the council's future. This session is adjourned, Veltoth declared. We will review the accusations and provide a full response. In 6 months? Marcus asked coldly. Like you told me to wait 6 months before? How many more will die while you review? Silence, Veltoth roared. You forget yourself, human. This council has maintained peace for 1,000 years. We will not be dictated to by an upstart species that has been spacefaring for barely a century. And there it was. The truth beneath the diplomatic language. The contempt that had always been there, hidden under false politeness. Marcus smiled. Thank you, Archon. The galaxy needed to hear that. He turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, chaos erupted as dozens of delegates began shouting questions at the council leadership. Outside the council station, Captain Rodriguez was coordinating with the Earth Defense Fleet. Human warships had formed a protective sphere around Axis Prime. But they were not alone anymore, Captain. We're receiving signals, his communications officer reported. Sarathi ships are entering the system. Keltharian vessels, too. They're taking up positions alongside ours. Rodriguez watched his tactical display with satisfaction. Green dots were appearing around the planet, representing allied ships. Not just 2 or 3, dozens, then hundreds. Open a channel to all ships, Rodriguez ordered. When the channel was open, he spoke clearly. This is Captain James Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Fleet. To all vessels joining us, welcome. We stand here not to make war, but to demand truth. We stand here to say that the age of accepting lies is over. Together we are stronger than any council that rules through deception. His words were broadcast across all frequencies. On planets throughout the galaxy, beings heard them and made decisions. Some sided with the council, but many did not. Back on Earth, humanity was mobilizing. The evidence released by Marcus had caused an uproar. Citizens demanded action. The government, which had been cautious about confronting the council, suddenly found itself pushed by overwhelming public fury. The president addressed humanity in a broadcast carried across human space. For too long, we trusted the Galactic Council to guide us. We believed their lies because we wanted to believe we had found friends among the stars. But they saw us as tools to be used and discarded, no more. Humanity will no longer bow to those who treat us with contempt. We stand with Ambassador Chen, we stand with our fleet, and we stand ready to face whatever comes next. Military production accelerated. Colonies that had been defenseless began arming themselves. Human civilians volunteered for military service in numbers not seen since the last global war. The fury that Marcus had unleashed was spreading through every human world. But humanity was not the only species stirring. On the Keltharian homeworld, protests filled the streets. Citizens demanded their government withdraw from the council. They carried signs showing Ixthor's face in the words, "He told the truth." The Sarathi Collective held an emergency session of their own government. They voted to suspend cooperation with the council until a full investigation was conducted. Their military forces began moving toward council space, not as invaders but as a show of force. The Brennics, a species of hive-minded beings, released a statement that shook the galaxy. We have analyzed the evidence. We have reviewed our own experiences with the Council. We conclude that the Council has engaged in systematic manipulation of younger species for the purpose of maintaining political control. This is unacceptable. The Brennics Collective will no longer recognize Council authority. In the Council station, panic was spreading. The carefully constructed order that had lasted a millennium was crumbling in days. Emergency meetings were held. Factions formed among the Council members. Some wanted to crack down hard, to use military force to restore order. Others argued for reform, for admitting mistakes and seeking reconciliation. But the hardliners were winning. Archon Veltoth convinced enough council members that any sign of weakness would mean the end of their power. We must show strength, he argued in a closed session. If we admit fault, every species will question every decision we have ever made. The galaxy will descend into chaos. We must blockade human space, cut them off from trade and communication. We must make an example that shows what happens to those who defy us. The vote was close, but the hardliners prevailed. The council issued an official decree. Human space would be quarantined. Any species that traded with humanity would face sanctions.
Any species that supported human claims would be investigated for sedition. The decree was broadcast galaxy-wide.
But instead of restoring order, it accelerated the collapse. Marcus was in his embassy when he heard the news. He immediately contacted Rodriguez. "They've blockaded us," Marcus said. "I know. They have 15 fleets moving to surround human space. But Marcus, look at this." Rodriguez sent him tactical data. Yes, 15 council fleets were moving, but 8 of them had species refusing to follow orders. The Keltharian contingent had withdrawn from its fleet. The Sarathi ships had turned around and gone home. Even some of the species loyal to the council were dragging their feet, delaying their response. "They can't blockade us if their own forces won't cooperate," Rodriguez said with grim satisfaction. Sarah burst into Marcus's office. "Sir, I've been monitoring the intelligence networks. Something big is happening. We're picking up massive data transmissions from inside the council's secure servers. Someone is leaking information. Who? We don't know yet. But it's not just one person. It looks like multiple council members are releasing classified files, internal communications, financial records going back centuries. It's everything." Marcus pulled up the data streams on his display. Sarah was right. The floodgates had opened. Whoever was leaking this information had access to the deepest levels of council security. As he watched, more and more damning evidence appeared. The council had not just manipulated humanity. They had done it to dozens of species over centuries. They had started wars to keep troublesome species weak. They had assassinated leaders who questioned their authority. They had rewritten history to make themselves appear benevolent. It was all there. Undeniable. Comprehensive. Devastating. "This is bigger than humanity," Marcus said quietly. "The council has been corrupt from the beginning." His communication console lit up. It was Ixthor calling from somewhere in the city. "Marcus, you need to see this." Ixthor sent him a video file. It showed a council chamber Marcus had never seen before. A secret meeting room. In the recording, council leaders from 20 years ago were discussing the human problem. "They're too innovative," one leader said. "Too aggressive. If we allow them to develop freely, they'll upset the entire power structure. Then we control their development," another replied. "We guide them into conflicts that bleed them dry. We use them as weapons against threats, then ensure they're too weak to threaten us. And if they discover what we're doing, they won't. They're too trusting, too eager to believe they've found friends among the stars. By the time they realize the truth, if they ever do, they'll be too dependent on our systems to resist." The recording ended. Marcus felt cold fury settle over him like a blanket. The meeting was held on Refuge, a small independent world that had never joined the council. Its government had maintained neutrality for centuries, making it the perfect location for what was about to happen. Representatives from 47 species gathered in a conference center that had been built for trade negotiations, not revolution. But revolution was what they were planning. Marcus Chen stood at the podium looking out at the assembled delegates. Among them were former council members who had resigned in protest. There were military leaders from species that had withdrawn their forces from council command. There were activists, journalists, and ordinary citizens who had risked everything to speak truth. And there were the Vrexians. That had been the biggest surprise. 3 days after Marcus's evidence went public, the Vrexian Dominion had sent a message. They wanted to talk. Now their representative, a scarred warrior named Thex, sat in the front row. He had been one of the warlords who attacked human colonies. But when the leaked documents showed how the council had been paying the Vrexians to attack specific targets, manipulating them into conflicts that weakened both species, even the Vrexians had been outraged. "We thought we were taking territory," Thex had told Marcus in a private meeting. "We thought we were expanding our domain. But we were just doing the council's dirty work, killing and dying to keep both our species weak." The Vrexians had declared a ceasefire with humanity. Now they were here, along with everyone else, to decide what came next. Marcus began to speak. 3 weeks ago, I stood before the Galactic Council and presented evidence of their crimes. They denied everything. They tried to silence me. They attempted to blockade human space and punish any species that supported us. He paused, looking around the room. They failed, not because humanity is strong enough to defy them alone, but because we are not alone. Every species in this room has suffered under council manipulation. Every one of you has seen the evidence. Every one of you has decided that enough is enough. A Sarathi delegate stood. What you started, Ambassador Chen, is spreading faster than the Council can contain. 4 more species withdrew from the Council yesterday. Their member worlds are in open revolt. The Council's own security forces are refusing orders. This is unprecedented. It's a power vacuum, another delegate warned. If the Council collapses completely, without a replacement structure, the galaxy could descend into chaos. Species will fight over territory, trade routes, resources. We could be looking at wars that make the Rexian raids look small. Marcus nodded. Which is why we're here. Not to destroy without building. Not to tear down without creating something better. The Council maintained order, even if that order was corrupt. We need to show the galaxy that we can do better. Ixthor rose from his seat. The old Keltharian had been given a place of honor at the conference. Recognition for the years he had spent trying to expose the truth. The Council's fundamental flaw was concentration of power, Ixthor said. A small group of species controlled everything. They made decisions for everyone. They answered to no one. Any system we create must have checks and balances built into its foundation. A Brennix representative spoke up. Their collective consciousness gave them a unique perspective. We propose a distributed authority model. No single body should have absolute power. Instead, multiple councils with overlapping jurisdictions. A council for trade, a council for security, a council for justice, each with representatives from all member species, with term limits and mandatory rotation. The discussion went on for hours. Ideas were proposed, debated, refined. Marcus listened to all of it, occasionally offering suggestions but mostly letting the other species take the lead. This could not be seen as a human power grab. It had to be a genuine collaboration. While the conference continued, events across the galaxy were reaching a critical point. On Axis Prime, Archon Veltoth watched his power crumble. The Council Station, once the center of galactic government, was now besieged by protesters from a dozen species. They filled the space around the station, their ships broadcasting messages demanding accountability. Inside the Council chamber, members were resigning. Some fled to their homeworlds. Others were arrested by their own governments, called back to face justice for their roles in Council crimes. Veltoth had tried everything. He had offered reforms. He had promised investigations. He had attempted to purge the Council of its most corrupt members, sacrificing them to save the institution. Nothing worked. The evidence was too damning. The anger was too widespread. The Council had lost all legitimacy. In a final desperate move, Veltoth ordered the remaining loyal forces to attack the human embassy. If he could not save the Council, he would at least punish those who destroyed it. But his own security forces refused. The commander of the Council Guard, a Vortan named Kess, stood before Veltoth and removed his badge of office. "No," Kess said simply. "I will not start a war over lies. The humans were right. You were wrong. I'm done following your orders." Other guards followed Kess's example. Within an hour, the Council Guard had effectively disbanded. Veltoth sat alone in his office, abandoned by everyone. Captain Rodriguez received reports of the Council's collapse with mixed feelings. Yes, they had won, but winning meant taking responsibility for what came next. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Refuge Conference," his communications officer reported. "Ambassador Chen wants to speak with you." Marcus's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, Rodriguez could see dozens of species representatives working together. "James, we've reached an agreement. The Galactic Council will be formally dissolved. In its place, we're creating the Free Species Assembly. It will have a completely different structure. Distributed power, mandatory transparency, term limits for all positions, and most importantly, a Bill of Rights that applies to all species, not just the powerful ones." "That's a good start," Rodriguez said. "But what about enforcement? What stops the new system from becoming just as corrupt?" "Multiple things. First, no species can hold more than 5% of seats in any governing body. No single species can dominate. Second, all meetings are public and recorded. No secret decisions. Third, we're establishing an independent investigative body with the power to prosecute anyone, including assembly leaders. And fourth, any member species can call for a vote of no confidence in the entire assembly. If 30% of members agree, we start over." Rodriguez whistled softly. "You're building in ways to destroy the system you're creating." "Exactly. Because the worst thing we could do is create another council, another group that thinks they're above accountability. This system is designed to be challenged, to be questioned, to be torn down and rebuilt if necessary. Will it work? Marcus smiled tiredly. I don't know, but it's better than what we had, and we're going to try. 2 weeks later, the formal ceremony took place. The Galactic Council voted to dissolve itself. Most of the vote was symbolic, as the council had already effectively ceased functioning. But the symbolism mattered. Archon Veltoth and 17 other council leaders were arrested and turned over to an interim justice tribunal. They would face trial for their crimes. Not human justice. Not council justice. A new kind of justice, with judges from multiple species and complete transparency. The Free Species Assembly held its first session in the same conference center on Refuge, where the initial planning had taken place. Representatives from 83 species attended. More were expected to join. Marcus Chen was nominated as one of the first arbiters, a position roughly equivalent to his old role as ambassador, but with significantly less power. He accepted, knowing that the real work was just beginning. The Assembly's first act was to establish the Free Navigation Commission. No more would the Council direct colony ships into danger. Navigation data would be public, verified by multiple independent sources and constantly updated. Species would make their own choices about where to explore and settle. The second act was to establish the Justice and Accountability Council. Led by Ixthor, who had finally received recognition for his years of investigation, this body would review historical council actions and provide restitution to wronged species. The third act was to open all council archives. Centuries of secrets were made public. Some of what they found was worse than anyone had imagined. The council had manipulated galactic history for so long that no one was certain anymore what was true and what was propaganda. But at least now they could start finding out. Captain Rodriguez and the Earth Defense Fleet were reorganized into the Free Species Defense Force. Ships from 20 species joined, operating under a unified command structure designed to prevent any single species from controlling the military. The Vrexians, surprisingly, became some of humanity's closest allies. The shared experience of being manipulated by the Council created a bond. Thex and Marcus worked together to establish trade agreements and mutual defense treaties. Former enemies became partners in building something new. 6 months after the Council's dissolution, Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the growing city around the assembly complex. Refuge had transformed from a backwater world